Hello and welcome. I'm so happy that I have slowed down my reading, but it probably won't seem like it because I am reviewing so many books today. I did slow down. I really did. I promise you. I'm having fun still. I have another great mix of books for you today. I hope that you have fun. Don't forget about my summer bingo that has started. And also, if you have a Discord account, I've had a Discord channel for years. You could join it. It is in the links below. I'm going to start with Cranford. I actually just finished this. I haven't even written a review up really. So this is me just my thoughts for you. Cranford, I'd been really looking forward to because I love Mary Barton by the same author, which is Elizabeth Gaskell. My problem with Cranford, I hear that this is her most favorite book of most people. It's the second book I've read by her. I look forward to many other books, but this one doesn't really have a plot because, as it turns out, this is from originally a magazine that had to do with Charles Dickens had a magazine. I don't really know much about it, but she had episodes. So this was each episode put into book form eventually. So each chapter is a story, but they are with the same sort of characters. Really, the main character is Mary Smith. There's also a Maddie. There are different characters. There are women getting together, talking. It's pretty fascinating because I like to get together with people and talk, but these are different accounts of different stories. I don't really know how to describe this. That's the best I could do. There was one chapter where they talked about life in India, and it was really sad with a woman that gives birth, all of her babies die. It was really sad, but I really loved that one. I don't know, it just had a lot of heart to it. I mean, most of these stories are kind of sad. The first story was about Maddie really enjoying the presence of this guy that comes, but something happens to him along the way. And it's just a sad story. All of these chapters have sad stories, but some of them are a little bit happier than others. There is one where it's letters between parents that Maddie recounts, I think. I don't know. I feel like Maddie is the main character in this because she comes up so much. There's even things in here with the maid and the people that work there and the relationships that they form together as friends. So I liked it, but it didn't really do it for me. It was okay. I wasn't drawn into it. I just kind of wanted to get through it. I think that's really sad, but that's how I felt reading it, where I'm just well, it's an okay story. It did feel like I was reading a magazine. There was definitely a difference there, but I'm glad I read it. The Secrets Beneath. I wasn't really sure what this was going to be about. The only thing I knew is that it had something to do with paleontologists that are digging something that happened called the Bone Wars during the 1800s, where it was who could find the best bones or who could find the most bones and stuff like that. It was not really about that, but it definitely was a big part of this story. The main part of this story is we have a young couple. They were together when they were young. They wanted to get married. It didn't happen. They parted once the guy named Joshua goes away to school. He wants to be a doctor. Anna, who stays home, but then she works alongside her father, who is a paleontologist. She just really loves drawing these bones and she loves to draw, and she's really good at it, and she does details and she explains these bones. But Joshua, he goes away and she just starts to think things in her own head without actually talking to him about what he thinks, that she just stops writing him when he's at school, but she still loves him so much. So he comes back home. But the start of this book doesn't even have anything to do with them. When I started reading this, I was I don't understand, because it's about this boy or a teen. I didn't really know how old he was at the time, named Julian, and he is with his mother and they're digging in the garden. They really are having a great time. The father is not nice. He has this struggle with his dad. And then it goes into the rest of the story, but Julian is throughout this story. So he comes up, but at first I was isn't this supposed to be about bones? And this becomes a bit of a mystery as well as a love story. And then you find a lot about Julian that is interesting. It confused me at times when I was reading, and then I got the hang of it because then I understood. I thought it was a good story. I really liked the relationship between Anna and Joshua. I didn't really like her, but I felt like I was her in a way because I sometimes get in my own head or I react. She's very reactionary, and I feel like that's why I could relate to her. But she's also very sweet and she's very kind. So I just felt like it's nice when you can sort of see yourself and even your bad qualities in someone in a book and you're like, yeah, I got to work on that. So anyway, it was really nice. I didn't adore it, but I liked it a lot. And I thought that the way it wrapped up was really good. This is a Christian historical fiction romance. I liked the amount of faith in it. I liked the idea of there being forgiveness, trying to accept things when they happen, trying to move forward, trying to understand, trying to see God's hand in things. It was good. For the content and the secrets beneath, there is murder. There's some violence against other people. There's talk about kidnapping. There are some money-hungry people. There is abuse in domestic violence, some lies. There's an understanding of a mental health problem in one of the characters. Oh, we gotta go to this because last review, I said I was going to review this, or maybe it was 2 reviews ago. I don't even remember, but I finally got it from the library and I was excited that I got to finish this series finally. It was very good. This was a good one. This one I liked better than the last one. Second book was the best. First and fourth books were really good. Third was my least favorite. I really liked Leanna. We got her story finally. Now she is a widow. She's the oldest of the cousins because each story is about a cousin. Something happens now that her son is older. So you get to like read him growing up throughout these books because like a couple years pass throughout each one. Her son is now 16 and you're like, wow, it's like real life how I feel with my sons getting so old. And he gets into some trouble. She has to go pick him up at the police station. And when she's there's another girl there who's crying and her dad comes to pick her up and he's a widower. They are doing the best that they can to raise their teens without another parent. And so they become friends and try to see like how they could help one another. And then they start to say like, well, maybe I could help out with your child and maybe we could encourage one another because they each have the opposite gender child. So, you know, she has a son, he has a daughter. But in their friendship, they start to have these feelings, but they're like not really wanting to have these feelings because they loved their spouses so much. One spouse died like 6 years earlier. The other one might have been a little bit more, maybe a little less. It's one of those. Anyway, it was really cute. Loved the faith in here. Really enjoyed it. There wasn't a lot of drama in this compared to some of the others, but there was a little bit in there that made it interesting. But I thought this was really well done. For content, by the way, there are infertility struggles talked about. There's some smoking, there's trespassing, there is a character that gets hurt, and there's still grief going on for the losses that they suffered. The Road to Paradise, I read this with Chrissy. It was great to do a second buddy read with her. I think that we both like really enjoyed this. I think she really adored this compared to me, but I loved it, but she like really loved it. And it was great to have, you know, just the ideas about what we thought. There's one character that we both were like, over. This definitely was one of the highest rated books for me for this month though. I really was surprised because I thought this was going to be like an average read for me, maybe just a 4-star, but it was a little higher than that. And it made me want to go to Mount Rainier or to Homa. The descriptions about the nature throughout this book, so beautiful. I loved it. Made me really, that's why I want to go there now. And I've never been to Washington State. This is set in the 1920s, the later ones. And the main character is Margie. Her dad's a politician. She just really loves nature. And it's interesting because The Secrets Beneath, both of these characters love to draw. For Margie, she gets a job where she gets to be at the national park and she's really good at understanding the Latin names of things. And she has great faith in God. But then there's a ranger named Ford Braden. He's kind of lost his faith because he has suffered loss and he doesn't know why God would allow such a thing to happen. When he sees this woman, he really finds her attractive. Now there are talks about attraction a lot in this. I think it was cute how it was done. I feel like it's how, you know, when I first saw my husband, I had thoughts about like, wow, he's really good looking. I don't have a problem with that. I know some people do. As long as you're not thinking really lustful things, you're attracted to someone, you're going to have thoughts about your attraction. Like I can't stop staring at this person that's really good looking and that interests me. Ford, he starts to learn about Margie, but man, he thinks she's a princess because, she can't be walking around here. She's got her dresses on and why is she here? And Margie, by the way, she is there there because she is running away, in a way, from her ex-fiance. I just thought this was a really well-told story. It made me interested the whole time. And there are 2 other books. Plus, this author has written even extra books that are not part of the series, but with a similar, like, national park type of longing. So I hope to read a whole bunch of them one day. For content in this, there is a time, and I was trying to, like, understand it, where a character falls, the dress kind of goes up, and there are people there. So I don't really know how to explain that. It was like definitely like, oh, whoa, oh no, you know, like it was hard. Christy and I both were like, yeah, but I don't understand why that's in here. There are some sweet kisses in here. I liked it. It wasn't crazy. There is a scene, knowing, especially in the 1920s, even now, like if you're alone with a man in the wilderness and you have to stay overnight and stay warm and you have to cozy up, just know there is a scene like that in this where it's questionable to other people. Especially even if you're innocent. There is this one character who likes to manipulate and control people and is a liar. I will say Margie, she also put her foot down where she needed to. And I loved her determination and her standing up for things. There was even a speech she gave, which I loved. A Journey to the New World. I got this from a little free library a month ago, and I read this in a day. It was very easy to read, but whoa, this is a middle grade book, but it's heavy duty. Like this will give you an understanding of what a young preteen would have gone through going on the Mayflower across the ocean, what she would even go through maybe once they get here. There was a lot of death and they don't hold back on that. Sometimes I was like, is this girl gonna be okay? She sees all this stuff around her. She does explain her feelings on that because this is, you know, her diary. I have only read one other Dear America book. These came out when I was 13. These books came out. This was the first book, and I read the 3rd book originally, and I reread it as an adult as well. So now I finally read the 1st book, and I'm getting the 2nd book because I was like, let me read more of these. What I thought was weird, by the way, is that she writes to her diary, calls it Imp, her name being Remember Patience. Patience was going to be her first name. She tells a whole story about why it's Remember instead. She's not very patient. So she says, well, diary, I should call you Impatient. So I'll just call you Imp for short, but Imp is like a weird thing, but she says, Dear Imp, throughout this. So that was just odd. But I really liked this book. I think it could be heavy for younger kids, but maybe like preteen to older, they could understand it better. And I think it will teach them in case they like didn't really realize how dangerous things were back then with like disease and everything. I liked it. I was really surprised because I didn't really care for the 3rd book, to be honest with you, but this one I liked more. For content, other than all the death that happens, there are people that throw up in this, especially at the very beginning of it. There are lots of illnesses. There are stillborns. Just so you know, guys, there are problems with baby deaths in this. So I need to warn you that. There are some child bullies. Like, even Remember, she kind of is like, I don't like this person. But I feel like it's very typical children that just don't try to get to know other people. And there is a point where she sees a Native American and she thinks that they're mainly naked. The Color of Air. The main character in this book, his name is Daniel. But this takes place in Hawaii in the 1930s, but also the 1910s. So it backtracks. So Daniel is a child in the 1910s. He has his mother and he has kind of like a stepfather, a man that stood up to try to help raise him and also cared about his mother. But his mom is already married. His father is one of those fathers who kind of abandons the family. He just leaves. He doesn't really care and he does his own thing. Daniel deals with the abandonment issues like big time throughout this book because he never saw his father again. But then you have his father figure who wanted to marry his mother, but because she couldn't even find the guy, she couldn't like leave him or anything. He just kind of took over as the father role. So I need to let you know that there is that in this book. Anyway, his name is Koji. I really like Koji. He is very kind, very loving, caring about all the people around him. He's a hard worker, but he grew up friends with the mother and even her husband. So it goes back and forth mainly from Koji and Daniel's perspective and why there's a rift between them too, which mainly has to do because of the father. But we also get a little bit of Mariko, her story, which is the mother. There are also these other characters. So Daniel has a love interest. that he's trying to reconnect with because he had lived in Chicago to become a doctor, comes back. He's trying to be a doctor in his homeland. And the woman that he's in love with has this grandmother who has dementia. I really like how this story developed because this mainly wraps around a big historical event with a volcano erupting and the lava just kept going and going. I always love to look up about, like, after reading it, I was like, let me find out more about this volcano. And I got pictures and I thought this was really fascinating because the lava, what they had to do to try to stop it, it's a controversial issue because people aren't sure if it really stopped or not. And people were really scared that it was going to just wipe out the towns around there. Gail Tsukiyama's writing, I just love her writing. I've read most all of her books. I think there's one book of hers I haven't read. And her writing and her descriptions, I just love them. It's just so good. But this book, it was kind of average for me. And I think it's because of the content, just because of the lifestyle, the content. It is a clean story, just so you know. There is the use of the F word twice. Reading this book the whole way through was great. And then all of a sudden, like, what's this showing up? There is, from what I gather, this is part of the content, guys, why I rated this lower. I didn't really understand what age this woman was. She was either a young woman or a teen, but she's raped. And it's not described how she's raped, but there is the abuse going up to that. And then afterwards, people like trying to force her to have an abortion. It seemed like she didn't really want to. So that's why it was like really sad. But then there's also a miscarriage in this. Like I said, there's a married woman with another man like in her life. There is mention about a goddess that is worshipped named Pele. And there's even talk about how there was like Christianity brought into that area, but how they just kind of said like, yeah, we'll be Christians if it makes us get help for things that we need. There's smoking, there's drunkenness, and there's violence, but it was really good otherwise. The Library After Dark. This was actually the best book that I read this month. I still have a few days left before the end of the month as I record this. In May, so far, this is the best book I read. The Library After Dark. So this was part of a book club for Isabel Reads. I will be talking with her in a week or two or something like that about this book in great detail, although this comes out probably after that. Hope you made it. Go watch her video to see what we talked about. To give you the gist of this, I want to just tell you one quote from it. The danger of fairy tales is that you might start thinking of yourself as the hero in your own story. I liked that. If you've been here a while, you know I don't handle lots of characters well in books, but this book, I could handle it because they introduced each one slowly and it wasn't like, here are all the characters, blah, blah, blah. It was like, okay, I get to gradually understand every character throughout this book so we get their perspectives. I really loved that. So I could hear their thoughts about this person and learn even about one of the other characters while they're having dialogue with them. So I was like, this is well done. The descriptions were really good. The plot though, an old building that was made into a big library, but there is this book that is talked about and a woman that supposedly murdered people, or their ghosts are scattered throughout the building. And all these people get to get a pre-tour of the library before the public gets to explore it. And so to me, this is where it felt like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from the book. Willy Wonka, I'm a big fan of the 1971 movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So this to me, it felt like that. I was like, wow, there's even a scene with wallpaper in it. So I was like, interesting, but do not lick that wallpaper. So Evangeline is the woman that had owned this place and she is now deceased. There are rumors about her daughter and her granddaughter. Where are they? What happened to them? Are they alive? Are they dead? So many rumors. The main character that we get the most perspective from is Arya. I loved how we could learn in the very first bit of this book, she doesn't really want to go to this library, but she has this boyfriend named Jasper and they have a shaky relationship. They've been together only a few months and they go to this library and she's kind of like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to go here. And she has a whole reason why. All of these people have a reason why they want to go there. And she's the only one that's like, I don't want to be here. So throughout it, we find out the connections that they have to this building. Okay, so you must know that there is no sex in this book. There is a makeout scene. That's it. But the language in this, I counted it. But this one I wrote down because it was a lot. So if you don't like language, like I don't like language, I got 16 D words from this. There were 4 small A words, shortened. There are 18 uses of the S word, and it's usually from one character. One of the D words is attached to God's name in vain. There were issues where a lot of times they would say God's name in vain. They would misuse the name of Jesus, but sometimes I felt like they were calling out for help for them. So it was hard for me to understand, is this them just swearing? Like maybe they are, but they're also calling out in a way. So I was like, it's hard for me to understand particularly how to separate that in this book. Jesus, his name was used 5 times, mainly by a Scottish character. I think all of them were. There is a short B word and a long B word, and 7 misuses of the word hell. There are no F words in this, just so you know. I don't want to say much more about this plot because it will give things away. If you read this book, please tell me your thoughts about it, because I was so into this book. I kept wanting to hear what was going on next. And I read this slowly. I tried to stretch it out, but then with the last 150 pages, I was just like, I'm reading it. Just let me finish it. I couldn't stop. This was really well written. I had so much fun. Like I said, I just kept wanting to read more. It was a great ending. I liked it. Another thing for content you need to know about, by the way, it is a horror book, and I've never really read horror books. There was some gore. I felt like it wasn't intense. How would I rate it? PG-13 gore? Yeah, because I have a hard time. I don't watch movies with gore. I don't sit well with it. So reading about it is a little bit hard too. I don't know how to explain it. There were things in here that made me go what? And I had to reread it what just happened? So that was more huh? Oh, there is murder in this. You guys, you need to know. There's murder. It's a book about murder. Think of it kind of like an Agatha Christie book, a little more revved up. I think that's a good way to say it, because I feel like Christie sometimes has some gore too. So there's also violence. There are injuries in here. There are talks about suicides and killings. Oh, what's really cool in this, by the way, there are little children's stories throughout this, fairy tale, but Brothers Grimm type of things. They were really short. They're just every once in a while they had them in here. And I thought that was really cool. And they were a little intense, like the Brothers Grimm. So there you go. The Old Capitol. This was written in the 1960s, and it's not too long. I did like some of this story, but a lot of it was kind of I don't know. It ended. I didn't really care for the ending. I was like, so are you going to tell us more? Okay, so the Old Capitol. Now, if you know anything about Japanese culture, the Old Capitol is Kyoto. There's about a 20-year-old woman named Chieko. She's really sweet. She will do anything for her parents. They just love her so much. But we find out pretty early on, she's talking to a guy that's interested in her. And she says, I'm a foundling. And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, I was found abandoned. What about your parents? I met them. She's like, they adopted me. They found me. They say this story, but she's like, but sometimes they tell this other story, and then sometimes they change it and say this. She's like, so I'm not really sure, but I do know that I'm not their actual daughter and they adopted me. But as we read this further, there's a little bit more in-depth stuff about that. I don't even want to give it away. I don't know how to say it without, I don't want to give a spoiler if this is something you want to read. I really like the descriptions of nature. This is totally a spring book. I'm so glad I put this for my spring list. There are sakura trees all over the place, but it does take place over time. I think it ends around the winter. We learn about festivals, and it's just really pretty, but there's one weird thing. So one character goes to a geisha house. There's a geisha that talks about something kind of gory and kind of gross, and you're kind of like, huh? Why do we have to put this in this book? I'll just say for content, we'll put it on the verge of PG-13, just based off of the one thing that has to do with this geisha. But otherwise, there's nothing sexual in it. So they talk about courtesans, idols, and gods because there is Shintoism. And other than the one thing, plus the spoiler I don't want to give away, that's the content. It was an average book for me. It was nice. I kept wanting to read it, so it was not bad. I just think it could have been a little better. You know what? I'm going to talk about this next. I was going to hold off a little bit, but I need to talk about it. This is the 8th volume of the Emma M. Lyon series. I've heard so many people rave about this one. Now, the 7th book was my favorite, but I've heard so many people love this one so much. I saw so many 5-star reviews of it, and this was probably my second to last least favorite book. And I know that's oh no, for probably a lot of people, oh no, what didn't you like about it? I liked the book. I love all the books. I love these books. I will rave about them. I love, love, love them. This book, I love that we get in-depth understandings of each of the male characters, especially about Pierce and Islington. Oh wow, that really surprised me. But Hawks, we're still learning about him. Still a mystery. But we get a little bit more about him because Emma, she has questions of her own about him. So this starts in May and it ends at the end of June. This was perfect for me to read at this time. There is a festival that happens every other year in the area. We have the festival. So I need to tell you a content warning that no one has ever told me about. I couldn't find anything about this anywhere. I know a lot of Christians read this book, And you need to know that there is a fortune teller, a Romani person, and Emma goes to the fortune teller with her friend. She gets her palm read. What I liked about that scene, though, is that afterwards, we have Hawks, who is the vicar, kind of question her about her decision about going there. He doesn't look down on her, but he questions her. But he does it in a really nice way. So that's something to keep in mind. There are 2 boxing matches in this that were very interesting. Very different ones, too. I must say, though, the descriptions of the walks in the countryside, so very pretty. Just the idea of just relaxing in the English countryside. There's a lot of that in this, and it was so refreshing for me. It just felt like a peaceful part of the story because there's a lot of heightened things, and then we get that lull, and then this heightened. So it's like, that's how this book is. It's kind of like crescendo. We meet a lot of new people in this that are related to other characters in this book, and I don't want to give away who they're related to or what, but it was very fascinating. So that's what this book is about. For content, there was a married woman who goes up to someone and kisses him on the lips. That's not her husband. It did catch Emma by surprise too. She's like, there is an attempted murder that is talked about in this one. There's domestic violence. But this one also has the most language than any of the other books. Most of the books maybe have like a misuse of the word hell and the D word. This one, though, we have 2 small B words, 2 large B words, usage of the D word and misuse of the word hell. And it's several times. So there's also a small A word too. All right, guys. Well, I'm all up to date on these books, but the 9th book is coming out sometime this year. So the author says, I'm on her newsletter. I've been waiting. The next month is supposed to be July and August. July is coming. Is it coming out July? I don't think so. That's just my thought. June is here by the time this video comes out. That's what I have to say. And Castle in the Air. This I did a buddy read with my pal Savannah over at the Cowmunity. That is because we are into Blimey Cow. I have been a very, very, very long supporter of Blimey Cow, and she is also a supporter. So the 2 of us connected. She loves Howl's Moving Castle. Howl's Moving Castle I read a few years ago, and this is the 2nd book from the Howl's Moving Castle series, Castle in the Air. And it's very different than I thought it would be. I was like, what is going on here? Because it was like a retelling of Aladdin. Now, this was written in 1990, which was before the animated Aladdin, as you would know. Obviously, Aladdin's an old story, the Tales of Arabia, all those things, you know. The main character in this book is Abdullah. But don't worry, we have Howl and Sophie in this book. But when you read this book, you're like, where are they? When do they come up? They come up. You got to be patient. That's what I was confused. And I'm sure a lot of people have been like, forget this book. They don't have them in here. They're in there. Abdullah, he works selling rugs. And this guy comes up to him and says, hey, I've got this magic carpet, you know? And he's like, oh, I don't believe you. That thing looks ragged. And he's like, no, it's magic. And all of a sudden, something happens. He's like, I'll buy it. Then he meets this beautiful woman named Flower in the Night, and she's a princess. And he does the whole thing like, I'm a prince. And there are so many funny things throughout this book. And he's like, I'm going to take you away from here. Let's get married. And from there, we have a whole story. It is very fun. But this is the Abdullah and Flower in the Night story, and Hal and Sophie, of course. So yeah, this was a funny book. I had a great time reading this with Savannah. She definitely loved this book. She even made memes based off of this book afterwards that she shared with me. I was like, that is great that she took the time to do that. The 2 of us are going to read the 3rd book at some point later this year, which is the last of the series. For content, you know Aladdin has a genie. There's a genie, so there's magic. There are magical animals in this. There is kidnapping. A lot of Persian stories and things set in Arab countries, there are talks about jinn in this. And jinn are equated to demons, and they're talking about gods. This is a fantasy story, but it does use that. But there are also angels mentioned too. There is no kissing, but there's talk about kissing. There is one thing that did kind of disturb me where Abdullah at one point has these weird relations. I don't know how distant they are, but he has like these 2 nieces of sorts that are like offered to him as wives. And he's like, oh, well, there's someone I'm in love with, you know? I don't want to marry these nieces. Talk about marrying multiple people too. I guess this is a middle grade book. This is more aimed for teens in my opinion. Have you read these? Do you want to read some of these? And as always, tell me what you're reading currently. I would tell you what I'm reading right now, but that will have to wait until next video. It is June. Go have fun. I'm in the past in May and you guys are enjoying June. Tell me how your June is going so far. Have fun. I've been having a good end of my May. Really, really nice. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Goodbye.